Jackie. I think it's recording.
Okay, so we're gonna get right into the skincare. I'm gonna be spraying Marc's face down with this Caudile Beauty Elixir spray. This is just gonna help hydrate his skin and keep his base nice and dewy. Marc does have dry skin, so I do not have to worry about adding a primer to help with oil because he really doesn't get oily throughout the day. Next, I'm going to be combing through his brows. Marc has a little bit of spacing in his brows, so I'm just going to be filling them in with an ash toned powder. I would say if you already have naturally thick and full brows, don't even worry about this step. Maybe just use a clear mascara and, comb them into place, and that's it. But as you can see, I'm really not adding much to Marc's brows. I'm just adding a couple hair stroke motions, keeping it very light. As you can see, I'm not going heavy with the powder. I'm taking just a very small amount just to kind of fill in just a little bit. I would say if you're going for more of a natural look, I would keep the powder to a minimum. I maybe even would use a very thin micro pencil just to add a couple of natural hairs in there. But it's up to you. Some people don't even have to do the brows, so do what you like. So I'm just going to keep on both sides, filling in a few hairs wherever I see them, making sure I'm not going too heavy or too harsh. For natural men's makeup, I am not going to be cleaning up the brows with concealer, so I am trying to make sure I get everything nice and clean on the first go around. Next, I'm going to be reaching into my Too Faced concealer in a second, and you'll see how I use that to cancel out the eyelids. Okay, so now I'm going to that concealer, and I'm just going to go ahead and start putting that all over his lid. This step is optional. If you don't have any redness or darkness on your lids, I would completely skip it. But I wanted his look to be more seamless, so I'm adding this just so that everything is cohesive in the end. Okay, and after I do this, I'm just going to go ahead and grab a little bit more concealer and put it on a larger brush. And I'm just going to spot conceal. Marc has very clear skin, so I'm only concealing the redness right now. He doesn't have dark spots or discolorations too much, so I'm really just doing this concealer to clear out the redness. As you can see, I'm blending it out, and it's creating a very airbrush finish. Some people could just stop here and only spot conceal, but I'm going to be doing a full base for Marc just so that you guys can see how flawless of a coverage you can get with little foundation. So once I keep blending that out, I'm going to take it across his cheeks, on his nose. He has a little bit of redness on his chin where he has stubble. So if you are a guy with facial hair, I would pay attention to that step. So next, I'm taking just a little bit of foundation and a beauty sponge, and I am just going to go ahead and tap that onto his skin. Now, the key to having flawless foundation is to having a very good color match. This match by the Too Faced foundation in the shade Praline was Marc's perfect shade, so it was very easy for me to give him a flawless finish once we picked a foundation that was going to give him medium coverage and that was going to give him the perfect shade. If you are going for more of that natural finish, I would keep the finishes to medium to, I guess I would say light to medium. I wouldn't go past medium coverage just because the fuller coverage you get, it could be a little bit more on the cakey side. And as you guys can see, I am just blending that foundation all over his face, down his neck. Make sure that you blend the foundation wherever anyone's going to see it. So I would, of course, blend on the cheeks, on the cheekbones, down the chin, on the jaw, even onto the ears. A lot of people will do their foundation and forget about their ears and have very different shades of foundation and ear tones. So make sure that you're just blending out wherever you're going to be able to see your skin. So once I do that, I'm just going back over, not with any product, just making sure that everything has been blended. And as you can see, look how flawless and radiant Marc looks. So next up, I'm going to be taking that same Too Faced concealer with that same brush, and I'm just going to conceal a little bit underneath his under eyes, down the bridge of his nose, a little bit onto his cheek. And as you can see, I'm doing very, very, very light amount of concealer. And I'm only adding this to add a little bit of brightness underneath of his eyes and onto his center of his face, just so that he's not one shade. I'm doing this to add dimension, not too much coverage. If you are going for more of a supernatural look, you can also probably skip this step or even use a concealer that is exactly your same skin tone. It's up to you. So right here, I'm taking this Becca Poured Prosecco Pop highlighter, and I'm using just a little bit just so I can highlight his cheekbones and the bridge of and his nose bridge. So after I do that, that's just going to add a very nice natural dew to his skin. And since Marc does have dry skin, he can go for more of that radiant look. Even if you have oily skin, I would go for the radiant look. I just wouldn't go too much. So right now I'm adding a little bit of that Fenty Killawatt highlighter in the shade Hustla Baby. And I'm putting that just onto his cheekbones and onto the ball of his nose. As you can see, I'm just blending that with the sponge, kind of making sure I take off any extra product, making sure it keeps it very sheer. Like I said, I want this foundation to be very unclockable, so adding that little bit of highlight but shearing it out is going to make him look dewy and radiant, but not too made up. So next I'm taking this Fit Me powder, loose powder foundation, and I'm using the shade medium, and I'm just using that all over his face. Now this powder is pretty much exactly his same skin tone, so I'm not adding any brightness. I'm pretty much just setting the base I put down. A lot of times with people with dry skin, you really don't have to set the foundation, but I'm just making sure that everything is very airbrushed and seamless. If you do have facial hair, I would say go very light on the powder because it is very hard to get powder out of hair, especially facial hair. So I would just go very light or just kind of specify where you want to put the powder. So if you have an oily T-zone, put it in your T-zone. If you have an oily chin, put it on your chin, you know, wherever you need it. So right here, I'm taking a contouring powder just very lightly to add a little bit more dimension back into his face. The one thing about natural looks is that you can look very much like an egg. So I'm just making sure that you can see his cheekbones, his nose is a little bit more noticeable, and his chin and jawline is contoured, but very lightly though. And as you can see, I'm just going to be blending through his face with that. All right, what are we doing next? Okay, so next I'm going to be taking a very light eyeshadow, and I'm just putting that into his inner corner. The shadow has no shimmer. It's more of just a light vanilla shade, just to kind of give him a little bit of highlighting in the inner corners to make him look more awake and more refreshed. So once I do that, I'm going to take that same shade onto his brow bone. Oh, okay. And once I put that onto his brow bone and his eyes, I'm going to be able to see that it adds a little bit of a brightness. Nothing too crazy. You really can't tell that it's there. It just makes him look awake. So once I do that, I'm going to go back in, just make sure his brows are good, make sure there's not too much going on in there, get any excess powder out of the brows. And then it looks like I am going to disappear really quick. I ran upstairs to go get this facial setting spray for him, so he's just hanging out. You know, I figured I'd leave this in the video. All right. Okay, so after that, I go ahead and grab my Evian facial water spray. This is essentially just water in an aerosol can, but it does make the skin look very dewy and very radiant. I'm taking that beauty sponge and I'm just patting that spray into the skin so it looks very seamless and it melds into the skin very, very nicely. Gives it a very velvety, buttery finish. Yeah, so once I did that, I am going to let Marc do some poses really quick. Yes, girl. Hey. Okay, so after I do that, I'm going to be going to grab a little bit more of that Fit Me powder, and I'm just using that to set his lids so that his concealer does not crease. This step is optional, but he does tend to have a little bit more of the oily eyelids, so I'm just going to go ahead and set that so that everything stays in place. As you can see, this is the final look. Marc's looking very flawless and radiant. Thanks for watching. Baby, don't play, all my confidence on